The head of Homeland Security is out, the latest after the abrupt resignation of Kirstjen Nielsen. Israel gears up for what looks to be a close election. We go to Jerusalem for a look at what's at stake as voters head to the polls. And a look at how some college basketball stars are turning to God during their moment in the spotlight. All this and more tonight on Fake Nation.
Leadership shakeup at the Department of Homeland Security. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. Well, just one day after announcing the resignation of DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, tonight the head of the U.S. Secret Service is out too.
That's right. President Trump instructing his acting chief of staff to fire Randolph Tex Alice. We have Ben Kennedy at the White House with more on what the administration is saying about the changes at DHS. But we begin tonight with national security correspondent Eric Phillips.
And Eric, just last week the president was praising the Secret Service, saying that they've done a fantastic job since day one. What is Alice why is he out?
Yeah, a lot can change in a week, can it? Still many questions tonight on what is behind this decision. But the president has decided to replace Alice with James Murray. He's a career Secret Service official. As the new head of the Secret Service, he will report directly to the head of Homeland Security. That current head will be changing very soon. In fact, Nielsen will only be on the job until Wednesday. President Trump announced last night that she is leaving her post. She's going to be taking her place somewhere else, and the acting director of DHS is Kevin McAleenan, current head of Customs and Border Protection. All of this makes it very clear the border is a major priority for this administration.
I've spent the last 24 hours since yesterday talking with government officials, with administration officials, members of Congress to ensure a smooth transition.
DHS Secretary Nielsen resigned just 2 days after traveling to the border of California and Mexico with the president to assess what he calls a crisis. Part of her letter saying, "Despite our progress in reforming Homeland Security for a new age, I have determined that it is the right time for me to step aside." The president thanked her for her service while also characterizing the situation at the border on Twitter. More apprehensions, captures at the southern border than in many years. Border Patrol amazing.
The system is full. Can't take you anymore.
Sources say Nielsen's resignation followed tensions and angry phone calls between her and the president, with the commander-in-chief holding her responsible for a spike in migrant crossings.
So much of the focus and the questions I've received this morning have all been about the TikTok, the palace intrigue of this particular move. I wish the focus would be on the actual problem facing this country.
President Trump appointed Kevin McAleenan as acting secretary of DHS. He was serving as commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection and has a good relationship with the White House.
His knowledge of this issue is not just extensive, but I think it will go to help educate the American people, educate Congress, and hopefully it will lead to some massive changes along the southern border.
Kevin McAleenan previously served as Border Patrol's deputy commissioner during the Obama administration. He's been responsible for overseeing 60,000 employees and managing a budget of more than $13 billion. And John and Jen, I should mention that Nielsen will stay on the job at DHS through Wednesday to make sure the transition to McAleenan is a smooth one.
Thanks, Eric. Well, now back to Ben Kennedy at the White House. Ben, a lot of change over at Homeland Security. Even though the announcement came today, it appears the Secret Service head Randolph Alice's firing had been in the works for weeks.
Yeah, John, you're right. It appears this DHS shakeup has been in the works for some time now. We are hearing that after 2 years of service, the White House simply was looking to make a change. Now, don't forget the Secret Service falls under DHS, as Eric was talking about. So Alice reported to Nielsen, who again just resigned. The AP states that a White House official said Alice's departure stems from a personality conflict within the agency. And this might only be the first personnel change in the department this week. Claire Grady is currently serving as acting deputy secretary at DHS. She was next in line for Nielsen's job, but since she was passed over by Trump, it is reported that she might actually step down on her own. Today is only Monday, guys. It is hard to believe, and we will, of course, keep you posted as this story develops. John, Jenna?
Busy Monday indeed. White House correspondent Ben Kennedy. Thanks, Ben. Well, here with us now to examine the shakeup at the Secret Service and the behind-the-scenes account of Nielsen's resignation is CBN's chief political analyst, David Brody. David, as we were just talking about, a busy Monday. So first we have Alice's resignation, which comes a day after Nielsen's. Are the two in any way related?
Well, I don't think they're related necessarily as it relates to why each one was let go, but they obviously all come under the umbrella of DHS, and it all comes under the umbrella of Donald Trump. And Donald Trump wants to go full throttle. And if you're going throttle and you're not going full throttle, there's the disconnect. And look, Kirstjen Nielsen was going throttle. A lot of people say full throttle, not enough for Trump. And clearly that was a big part of the problem.
Well, you know, not at all a secret that the relationship between Nielsen and Trump had been rocky, but it seemed to be improving after John Kelly, former White House chief of staff, left. So maybe expected, but a little bit out of the blue?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were expecting this for a while now. And once again, why? Because he wanted her to do certain things that she just couldn't get there. She just couldn't do. For example, I mean, Trump says it's no secret. I mean, he came out in public the other day and he talked about these folks, they come across the border and they want to just claim asylum. And we know it's not true. It's not asylum. They just want to come across and provide for their families. It's not hardship or anything like that. So he was basically telling Nielsen, you know, to crack down on that. But how are you going to do that? And I think, you know, at some point there was so much friction that it was just untenable.
And not just President Trump, but a lot of people within the White House who are in the president's inner circle. What role did Stephen Miller, one of his senior advisors, what role did he play in pushing Nielsen out?
Well, Stephen Miller is the de facto Department of Homeland Security chief. He has been for a while, and that's the truth of the matter. Now the question becomes, how much will his hardline positions on, let's remember, not just immigration, we're talking about illegal immigration. You know, the media always talks about Washington Post, New York Times talks about how Trump's and Miller's hard stance on immigration. It's not on immigration, it's on illegal immigration, and I think it's very important to understand. But he will be key on all of this.
Yeah,
yes.
Don't they want to increase the number of legal immigrants that are let into the country?
Well, they do, right, done the proper way, for sure. And I think that's a big part of the story that's never told. But look, Stephen Miller, the question now becomes, will he, there's a lot of folks saying, just make him Department of Homeland Security secretary. Now, people will say, wait a minute, he can't get confirmed. Hold on for a second. You can thank the Democrats for that. You only need 50 votes. In the Senate, they've got 53, so they've got some wiggle room.
David, President Trump reportedly wanted the toughest cop around on border security. What do we know about McAleenan, and how does he fit that bill?
Well, he pushed back against that executive order. Remember that the separated families executive order came from Jeff Sessions at the time, and he pushed back on it, said, you know, it was the right thing to do to kind of to think it through. But at the same time, he seems to have pretty much towing the line. He's towing the line here as well. So I think what's going to be fascinating to watch is the Stephen Miller, Donald Trump inside game, if you will, from inside the White House, and the Department of Homeland Security chief, whether it be an acting chief or whoever the new person is, how that plays out in public. There's going to be two different tracks going. That's going to be the rubber, where the rubber potentially meets the road.
All right, David Brody, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Well, the Trump administration will now label Iran's Revolutionary Guard a foreign terrorist organization. It's the first time the U.S. has designated a part of another government as a terrorist entity. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says it's an important step to counter terrorism within the Iranian regime.
This designation is a direct response to an outlaw regime and should surprise no one. And it builds on the more than 970 Iranian individuals and entities that the Trump administration has already sanctioned. For 40 years, the Islamic Republic's Revolutionary Guard Corps has actively engaged in terrorism and created, supported, and directed other terrorist groups. The IRGC masquerades as a legitimate military organization, but none of us should be fooled. It regularly violates the laws of armed conflict. It plans, organizes, and executes terror campaigns all around the world.
And the designation imposes sanctions that include freezing assets of the Revolutionary Guard and bans Americans from doing business with the group. Iran is threatening to retaliate for the decision.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he'll declare Israeli sovereignty over Jewish settlements in the West Bank. It's a move Palestinian leaders warn could destroy the peace process. And it means the West Bank would be part of Israel in any future negotiations with the Palestinian Authority.
We will go to the next stage in applying Israeli sovereignty in the settlements. But I don't make a difference between the settlement blocks and the isolated settlements because from my perspective, any point of settlement is Israeli and we have responsibility towards them as the Israeli government. I will not uproot anyone and I will not transfer sovereignty to the Palestinians. When we abandon territories, Islamic extremism emerges immediately and slaughters us, and I won't give them the heart of the state of Israel.
Netanyahu's announcement comes just as Israel is set to hold an election tomorrow. Well, that election will decide the political fate of Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Yeah, polls show a close race between his party and the coalition party determined to defeat him. John Waggy has more from Jerusalem.
Depending on which poll you believe, Netanyahu's party is running a little ahead of or a little behind the new Blue and White Party. It's a coalition led by political newcomer Benny Gantz, former chief of the Israeli Defense Forces. In fact, the Blue and White Party is a notable collection of military and secular leaders. Many of them once served with Netanyahu, but now are his bitter political rivals. They see the pending indictment of the prime minister as an opportunity to replace him. Israel's Attorney General announced his intention to indict Netanyahu just weeks before the election. Since then, Likud has risen in the polls. Knesset Speaker Yuli Edelstein is Likud's second in command. He often fields media questions about the pending indictment.
You have to remind us that indictment happens in court. And before that, according to the very old rule, everyone's innocent till proven guilty. And that's the situation of the prime minister right now.
Pollster Mitchell Barak says even a week before the vote, it doesn't feel like the campaign has started.
There's been a lot of mudslinging back and forth, but if you walk around Jerusalem or Tel Aviv or anywhere else, you don't see signs on people's balcony, you don't see signs in their window.
Netanyahu has reaped the benefits of his close relationship with President Trump and the visit of Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro to Israel. Barak recently took an in-depth survey of Israelis and found their support for Trump has skyrocketed to 73%. Trump has fulfilled a dream basket of Israeli wishes, from moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, to recognizing the Golan as part of Israel, to cracking down on Iran and Palestinian terrorists.
So Israelis really, to a certain extent, see that there's a Likudnik, if you will, a Likud person in the White House, and they see that Netanyahu is very, very close with President Trump.
Israelis will decide April 9th whether those close U.S. ties will be enough to put Netanyahu over the top. Experts say many, if not most voters, won't even decide until the final 4 days. John Waggy, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Coming up, the fight over President Trump's tax returns, why the White House says they'll never be released.
The White House Chief of Staff vows Democrats will never see President Trump's tax returns. This could set in motion a huge legal battle between the Trump administration and lawmakers. CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy is also covering this story for us tonight, and he joins us again from the White House. Ben?
Jenna, Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney calls this a political stunt. Trump says there's nothing to learn from his tax returns, and to top that, he said he can't even release them because he's being audited.
I've been under audit for many years.
The president's tax returns were all the talk on Sunday shows.
That's an issue that was already litigated during the election. Voters knew the president could have given his tax returns. They knew that he didn't, and they elected him anyway, which, of course, is what drives the Democrats crazy.
Democrats say it's not crazy to want to see those returns, which would reveal Trump's sources of income, tax rates, charitable donations, and more.
This is a president who has resisted any oversight or inquiry into his affairs. And so I think the chairman of Ways and Means has every right to determine, is the IRS following its own policy and protocols?
Lawmakers want the IRS to hand over Trump's personal and business returns from 2013 to 2018. But the president's lawyer says Democrats are trying to use the IRS as a political weapon.
So this idea that you're using a hearing, a Ways and Means hearing about IRS enforcement as a way to get to the president's private, individual and business tax returns makes no sense both constitutionally and statutorily.
Lawmakers asked the IRS to provide 6 years of Trump's tax returns by April 10th. That is this Wednesday, 2 days from now. So it is clear that won't happen. The next stop for this case is the courts. Jenna?
Now, Ben, we also understand it's not just Democrats here in D.C. Who want the tax returns.
Yeah, Jenny, you're right. We're learning that the New York State legislature is set to introduce a bill allowing the release of Trump's state tax returns. The New York Times reports it would allow state returns to be released for specific and legitimate legislative purposes. That would only happen if the state returns were requested by 3 U.S. congressional leaders. The bill is slated to be introduced sometime later this week. Ben Kennedy, CBN News, the White House.
Thanks, Ben. Well, another day, another White House candidate. Democrats are on course to having the largest crop of candidates in history this election cycle. Henry Hughes is the latest, officially announcing today. He dropped by Faith Nation last week and explained why, as a pro-life Democrat, he's running a long-shot campaign. Why are you running, and what makes you qualified to be president of the United States?
Well, my opinion is every American is qualified to be president of the United States. We can look at some of our past presidents. It doesn't require genius. It doesn't require good morals. But what really qualifies me most is that I have a view of the world that I think would help America to better realize its possibilities.
Henry, you just hinted that your campaign is going to encounter a lot of setbacks. So you've got what some people might call as a long shot campaign. What's your ultimate goal in running?
My goal, and the goal of everybody participating in the primary process, is to participate in the debate and to structure the future of the country, because stories are really what constitute the future of America. How do we tell the stories? What do we say? What do we discuss? And so I'm interested in getting the pro-life issue discussed as part of the Democratic primary process. I've challenged every single Democratic candidate to debate me one-on-one about the life issue. And the force of the pro-abortion movement in America has been to stop debate, because the only way that the pro-abortion people can win is by stopping the debate on this issue.
Henry, if you were to be the party's nominee, how would you challenge President Trump?
I would tell everybody the best candidate for the Democratic Party would be an older, white, male, heterosexual, who doesn't believe in taking people's guns away and doesn't believe that in partial birth abortion or abortion for sex selection, because that would prevent Donald Trump from getting all of the people in those areas.
As far as messaging and as far as attack and counterattack, how would you defeat a President Trump in a campaign?
Well, I would say, you don't have to vote for President Trump because he's pro-life, because I'm pro-life too. Don't have to vote for President Trump because he would protect people's Second Amendment rights, because I would protect some people's Second Amendment rights as vigorously as he would, perhaps even more vigorously. And you know what? I'm a nicer guy. I'm more sincere. And if you sat down and you had to say, would I leave my children with Donald Trump over the weekend, or would I leave my children with Henry Hughes over the weekend? People will make the decision that they would rather leave their children with Henry Hughes.
And there are currently about a dozen major candidates who've already declared they're running, several more lesser known. More are expected to announce a possible run soon, including former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe and, of course, former Vice President Joe Biden.
Still ahead, we head to Minneapolis for a look at the biggest night in college basketball.
Jenna, big night tonight. Big night as the University of Virginia faces off against Texas Tech with a national title on the line.
That is right, but as Sean Brown reports from Minnesota, players from all the Final Four teams say they aren't just playing basketball.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to U.S. Bank Stadium here in Minneapolis for CBN's coverage of the 2019 Final Four, where Virginia, Michigan State, Auburn, and Texas Tech battled their way round after round to get here for a shot for the national title. But after an exhilarating Saturday night of basketball filled with big shots and controversial calls, Virginia and Texas Tech will play tonight for the national championship. And listen, I don't know about you guys, but I can't wait to see it. And I understand that Auburn and Michigan State are headed home, but players from all four teams agree that win or lose, God still has a plan for their lives.
The Auburn Tigers had a historic run during this year's NCAA tournament, becoming the only team to beat Kansas, North Carolina, and Kentucky back-to-back to make it to the Final Four, their first in school history. And though they fell just shy of advancing to the championship game, they still give God the glory for the opportunity.
My sole purpose, on the earth, is to glorify God, and having a faith in Christ, you want to work as hard as you possibly can for the Lord. That doesn't mean God will bless you with a win. Do your part, plan 100%, and God will have a perfect plan for you.
In the lows and highs, and just know that He's going to be there for you, and just got to give glory to God.
Michigan State did what many thought would be near impossible for any team: defeat Zion Williamson and the Duke Blue Devils to get here. And a lot of their motivation came from sophomore guard Joshua Langford, who was injured earlier this season. And he's relied heavily on his faith to keep things in perspective and to help inspire his teammates from the bench.
I think because of my belief in God, I think it's allowed me to have a good foundation. I think throughout the whole process, I've just been trying to figure out what else it is that God has placed inside of me, and I feel like that's my voice. That's a gift from Him, and I've been using it and just trying to help through that way for the team.
I believe God works in mysterious ways, and He works in each way possible. So for me to go out there, He's given me the ability just to play out there. So I thank Him every time I step on the court, because I know one day it can be taken away.
During the 2018 NCAA tournament, Virginia made history, but for the wrong reason, when they lost to UMBC, becoming the first #1 seed to get knocked out in the first round. But redemption came this season because now they're playing for a national championship. It's a story that began with head coach Tony Bennett and 5 biblical pillars.
There's a verse that says, always be prepared to give a reason for the hope that you have, but do it with gentleness and respect. And I think that's what you have to do. I know what my hope is for me. I know what my life is grounded on, and there's nothing that touches it. It's a joy that's unspeakable. And so when you have players, our program is built on pillars, 5, they're actually biblical pillars. And whether our guys, I'm always respectful, whether they believe that or not, their wisdom for our program. Humility, do you know who you are as a team and as a player? Passion, do you play with passion? Unity, being part of something bigger than yourself. Servanthood, the way to greatness is for being a servant, and then thankfulness. So we use those for our team specifically. And again, your always hope is that you guys, through sports, they become better players and young men, and they'll always return to what you just model to them.
Virginia guard Kyle Guy has been a shooting rock star throughout the tournament. During the gritty match against Auburn, his skill was on center stage when he had to make 3 free throws with the game on the line after he was fouled trying to make this jumper for the win. Every kid dreams of moments like that, but after preparation meets opportunity, Kyle says he leaves everything else in God's hands.
I would not be here without him. I always shower before games, and that's kind of where I get my mind right, say a little prayer or whatever. And, I always, obviously through everything that I've been through, this team's been through, I just, when I'm praying, I'm always like, I want to win more than anything, but I know your plan is greater. So that's something I always hang my hat on. Sorry.
Who would have thought that Texas Tech would be playing Virginia in the championship game? Most probably didn't, but the Red Raiders have shown resilience through the entire tournament. And for some of them, that tenacity and focus stems from a shared faith in Jesus Christ.
My dad's a pastor, Jared Culver's dad is a pastor as well, and I just grew up in a household that God is the center of everything that we do. Back home, if I was to wake up anytime, we wake up at 5 a.m. and pray, just have our quiet time before we start the day and things like that. And just having that relationship with Christ, and it just fuels me and it keeps me going.
Matt Mooney had a big game against Michigan State. The sharpshooter dropped 22 points against the Spartans, including 4 3-pointers. And he says that's his way to glorify the name of the Lord.
Number one is my faith. At the end of the day, basketball's not eternal. The only thing that's eternal is Jesus. And you can't take money or basketball or anything with you when you die. So, I'm blessed, and I try to play for an audience of one when I get out there.
Great report.
Yeah.
You rooting for any team?
I was going to ask you.
I think Abigail Robertson is the sweetest person I know, but if I don't root for UVA, she might get at me.
Okay, I'll go for Tech.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for Faith Nation.
Have a great night.